Hi there, it's Vanessa from Cove, and you're listening to the 84th edition of The Networker. This week's content landed on a theme that kept repeating itself from very different angles. The relationships that matter most are the ones you build before you need them. Every article, every recommendation this week circles back to that same idea. So let's dive in. We open with a piece from the Cove blog that uses the Devil Wears Prada as a lens for 5 networking lessons. Strip away the fashion houses and the billionaires, and every scene that moves the story turns on a relationship being activated or neglected. Weak ties that went cold for 20 years stayed cold. The strong ones picked up instantly. And Nigel, the character who quietly engineers Andy's return to the industry, had been working on that for years before anyone knew it was needed. Granovetter's research on weak ties and Milgram's 6 degrees of separation both get a reference, but the real takeaway is simpler. Keep your Nigels close and know who to call before the Hail Mary moment arrives. Next, Forbes brings a practical guide for networking with senior leaders and busy people. The core insight is about pacing. Most people follow up once, hear nothing, and disappear. The professionals who build genuine relationships with senior leaders vary their content so every message brings something new. They give before they ask, make their goals explicit so people know how to help, and pace their outreach based on how urgently they need the relationship to deepen. It's the difference between becoming noise and becoming someone worth responding to. Moving on, Business Insider asked a group of career coaches and etiquette professionals for the real do's and don'ts of networking in 2026. The patterns they flag are familiar but worth naming. Generic LinkedIn messages. Asking for too much too soon. Waiting until you need something to make contact. The advice that cuts through is equally simple. Personalize every outreach. Show you spent as much time preparing as you're asking them to give. Maintain relationships when you don't need anything. And remember that the gold standard of connection is still in person. Now, Forbes also covers a piece on remote work and what it's doing to professional networks. Microsoft tracked over 61,000 employees and found that firm-wide remote work made collaboration networks more static and siloed. Cross-group connections dropped by roughly 25%. The professionals who stay on strong career trajectories don't wait for the environment to recreate those interactions. They schedule serendipity, maintain weak ties with low-pressure consistent contact, and use AI to stay visible without disappearing entirely into their own workflow. The responsibility for rebuilding a shrinking network belongs to each individual. The environment won't do it for you. Next up, Harvard Business Review brings research that is counterintuitive in the best way. A study involving over 2,700 full-time employees found that when colleagues attribute your music listening to leisure rather than productivity, they perceive you as less engaged and are more likely to withhold help or treat you with incivility. The same behavior generates completely different social responses, depending on the story others construct about it. One sentence of framing, something as simple as going heads down so music is going on, shifts the interpretation before anyone else writes it. It's a small finding with a larger implication. Your coworkers are constantly constructing narratives about you, and most of the time you're not shaping them. We close the articles with a Business Insider piece that makes the case for networking as farming rather than hunting. In a market where AI is making employers more selective and white-collar leverage has weakened, the professionals who land roles are the ones who built relationships before they needed them. Social media gives the illusion of connection without the substance. The favor economy runs on genuine relationships where someone is willing to go to bat for you, not because you just asked, but because you've been showing up for years. The second best time to plant that tree is today. Before we wrap up, let's turn to this week's recommendations. Our book of the week is Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg, the author of The Power of Habit. The central argument is that every conversation contains 3 simultaneous layers: practical, emotional, and social. The professionals who connect most effectively are the ones who identify which conversation is actually happening and match it. Most miscommunication isn't about the words, it's about 2 people operating on different levels without realizing it. Duhigg backs the argument with research and storytelling that moves from jury rooms to CIA recruitment to marriage counseling. It's one of the most practical books on human connection published in recent years. And our podcast of the week is Hidden Brain, specifically the episode called The Empathy Gym. Psychologist Jamil Zaki makes the case that empathy isn't a fixed trait. It's a skill you can develop through deliberate practice. The episode revisits his research on what he calls the empathy gym. And then Dr. Leslie John, who we featured last edition, returns to answer listener questions about the benefits of opening up to others. Two researchers, one shared argument. The quality of your relationships depends on how much you're willing to work at them. That's all for the 84th edition of The Networker. The thread this week is about time horizons. Every piece of advice, every research finding, every story this week points to the same truth. The relationships that actually move your career, your business, and your life forward are the ones built long before they're needed. Not in a crisis, not in a job search, just consistently, quietly over time. That's the only networking strategy that doesn't feel like networking. Until next time, stay connected, stay deliberate, and remember, your network isn't defined by how many people you reach. It's defined by how intentionally you build. And don't forget, the full edition of The Networker is waiting for you in your inbox. I'll see you next time.